All right, hi everybody. We are back with this year's rendition of our winter essentials. My name is Kevin Schulz, and I just kind of want to talk to you guys today about what I've been riding over the last few months, what I've been enjoying, and kind of my go-to quiver right now in terms of what I'm going to be riding going into the winter. I've got 4 boards out, and I've kind of arranged them from smallest to largest in terms of height, but not in terms of volume. So kind of starting from your left to right over here is one of my favorites and one of the new additions here, which is the Machadocado by Rob Machado. So originally when I got on this board, I first grabbed it and I kind of thought it was going to be just a small wave board and something that I'm only going to ride in like really grindy micro waves. I was quickly wronged by that because the first session I had on it was out at lowers when lowers was pretty solid, and the board went amazing. It had great hold. It was super fun. It rolled over on rail really nice, even for how wide it was. And I kind of fell in love. I texted Rob right away and was like, hey, this is one of the better boards I've ever surfed. And it carried so much speed, transitioned incredibly well from section to section, and just felt like it was gliding over each section. So a couple unique features about this board. You have a double concave back here with a little V through the tail up to about the midpoint of the board, then it goes flat into single. This one here is 5'2", and just to mention, I'm about 6'1" and 165 to 170 pounds on a good day, maybe soaking wet in a wetsuit, about 170. So this board is 26.5 liters, right around the normal shortboard volume that I ride. So I ride it pretty traditional in terms of volume. Rounded out nose, kind of smushed down squash tail, really wide. And then of course, fin setup. I've been riding the new Machado 2+1 set. Difference being these fins being a little more raked out, and then this center trailer is actually a bit bigger, which I've experimented with in some other 2+1 setups, and that larger trailer fin gives you a little more stability through the back versus a traditional small +1 or running no twin fin at all. Board has a ton of control. It's got nice full round rails all the way through. Sharp edge is just about 6 inches above the fins, so ton of release off the top, and I felt like this board was almost a skateboard. Super skatey. I could put the board where I wanted it, and I just absolutely loved how this thing felt in most every wave that I've had the opportunity to surf it in. Great all-rounder, good go-to for your winter quiver, and one of my personal favorites right now. So moving on, I know I mentioned that I thought this board was going to be your extremely small, grindy, everyday surfboard for when it's knee-high or even below. That brings me to the Sweet Potato. So Sweet Potato, this one is also a 5'2", and it is extremely wide, extremely round, and very potato shaped. This one is 31 liters and comes as the 5-fin setup, so you can actually ride it as a quad, a thruster, or a 2+1. My first few surfs on this board, I did not have a pad on it. As you can see, I kind of stripped the wax off and put a pad on this thing more recently, and I noticed that the pad transformed the board. I am a pretty back-footed surfer in general, so getting my foot kicked up against the arch back here was critical for surfing. As soon as I had that happen, I felt like my transitions over sections got better, had more control over the board. That's just a me thing. I know everybody doesn't love running pads, but for me, I do like riding them. A couple unique features of this board. You have this super wide tail with the swallow in the back, and then this extremely wide outline. So 31 liters, pretty big for me, but it is so fun in small surf where you need to transition sections. I was riding the new Velox Aircore Firewire fins in this particular board. Those fins focus a little more on rake as well, so kind of more drawn out turns. Now, the surf that I did get to ride this in was really small T Street and then about chest to head high lowers, and I absolutely love this thing for just transitioning over sections. I've surfed it at San Onofre a few times and just had a blast. It paddles incredibly well just because you have so much foam up under your chest. It may be short, but it gets the job done, and it's a great board for those really small winter days where you just want to go out, catch a wave, glide over sections, and have fun. The one thing I noticed with it is I had a little more trouble transitioning from rail to rail, and that's just due to the wide point of this board. It's super wide. I believe this one is 21 7/16 inches wide versus my traditional short boards. They're closer to that 19.5 or 19 range, sometimes even into the 18s, which we'll get into in the S-Boss here. Kind of pretty straight, single concave all the way through with a little V in the tail, just like the Machadocado over here. So that V in the tail is just gonna help you allow that transition a little easier. Like I said, super wide, super fat, ultra gravel surfboard, paddles incredibly well for the extra small days. But a little bit big for me. That being said, I still loved it. I was riding it as a thruster most of the time. I put a quad setup in and it loosened up the tail when I was going really fast and had a ton of drive. And then you could even run a 2+1 set. Mind you, your side fins with your center fin is a lot more space, so you're gonna free up that board for turning capabilities a lot if you do run it as a 2+1. So those are kind of my more smaller to medium size wave boards. And then getting into the more traditional short board. When I say traditional, I just mean waves that I'm riding chest, head high, overhead. So this here is the S-Boss, and this S-Boss is in ibolic technology, and the S-Boss is a really unique board. Kelly, myself, Dan Man kind of all came together to create this thing. There's a lot of concave, a lot of rocker differences going on, and just a board that is extremely unique and not something that you look at and say, I would ride this in double overhead surf, but I would. I've had some really fun sessions on this, and it's just been kind of my go-to short board. So I know I mentioned I rode that as a 2+1, this sweet potato as a thruster. I ride this board pretty strictly as a quad. So unique features about the S-Boss in ibolic. You have a giant double V, spiral V concave all the way through the bottom. What that does is allows transition from rail to rail and simplicity for rolling over on those rails and turning very sharply, very quickly. As you can see, it's got this bulleted out nose. Now, this board with the round tail, I would normally ride a traditional short board at about 5'9" or 5'10". We've lobbed off the top 3 inches on my size and come down to a 5'6", but it has the feel and the hold of a 6'0", 5'10", 5'9", whatever it may be, traditional kind of short board. This is an amazing board. It goes well in tubes, it goes well in point break surf, it carries speed super nicely, and Dan Man, Kelly, and myself have all really enjoyed this board in pretty much every kind of condition. I know I talked a little bit about how well it goes in surf overhead high. Now, surf underhead high, it's just as good. Still been riding it as a quad, and the beautiful thing about when you ride it, if it is smaller, is that lobbed off nose. You lose quite a bit of length in front of your feet, so it makes that transition in small waves super easy. Absolutely love this board. Nice kind of narrow outline and super straight rail line. That's where that double V in the bottom helps turn over. So traditionally, a really straight rail line would track through the water. It'd be harder to roll over, but that double V all the way through the bottom helps it kind of teeter like you're riding a snowboard. So from toe to heel, so on and so forth. It helps that transition. I ride the Endorphin quad set with this one, and it's amazing. Crazy amount of drive. And something that we did with this S-Boss is these quad and thruster setup is a little more spaced out than your traditional quads being pushed together. It frees up the tail of the board. It gives it a thruster feel, but the speed of a quad. I was never a quad guy until I actually got on this S-Boss, and we first started testing these boards, I don't know, 4 or 5 years back now. And it's quickly become one of my favorites, if not my favorite go-to surfboard in my quiver. Absolutely love this board. Have so much good things to say about it. And this one is 27.5 liters, 5.6, and just great board all around. Can't go wrong. Go-to board in the winter, whether it be tubes, point breaks, small surf, big surf, what it may be. Absolutely love the S-Boss. And then coming down to the last board here, this is the Great White Twin by Mr. Wu, and I love this board too. This difference being this has your volcanic construction. Something I noticed about the volcanic construction right away is the rigidity of it. It springs back under your feet super well, and it has a lot of pop. They're a tad bit heavier than the Helium Tech or the Ibolic Tech. That being said, it has a ton of responsiveness and spring under your feet. 2+1 setup here. As you can see, I ride the Endorphin 2+1 in this, and that was something I believe that Kelly and Mr. Wu really focused on for this board particularly. This board and this fin pairing is meant for each other. Down here you have your single wing followed into this deep swallow, almost a fish-esque tail. These always kind of serve as little breaking points of water. So as you can see, the wing is just behind the fin, so water will break off your fin back here, and then water will also break off of this wing, and then you have your control in your tail outside through the swallow. The rail line on this one is a little bit different than most of these. So these three boards kind of have more of a chunky rounded rail line. This board has more of a L-shaped rail line, so allows you to engage the rail and sink that rail in. The sharp edge is, I don't know, maybe 12 inches above that fin line versus a few of these, my edge ends 6 to 8 inches. And that's a personal preference and something that you might have to experiment with to see how you like that. Unique thing about this 2+1. Twin fins, 2+1s, you always think of riding, hey, this is gonna be a small wave board. This is not a small wave board. I believe I've seen clips of Rizal Tanjung on pretty good sized Padang and Ulus on this thing. I had the opportunity to ride this in some decent sized beach break surf and point breaks when it was overhead and the rail line would hold and I could drive around but still get the feel of having release through the tail in this board. This board is 5'7", and it is 27.5 liters. So here I got 27.5 liters, 26.5 liters, 31 liters, and 26.5 liters on that Machadocado in the end. They're all different variations of boards, of course, and it's something that you might need to look at, what kind of waves you're surfing every day. What you like, whether you like 2+1s, quads, thrusters. I've even experimented with some 5-fin setups in that S-Boss, and I've found them all to go pretty well. Overall, this is gonna be my winter essentials pick. This is my quiver, my go-to. I can run into the garage and usually pick from one of these boards. It'll get me through most surf sessions and have a lot of fun. So, winter essentials. Hit me with any questions you guys have in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. Overall, this is just kind of what I'm gonna be going to this winter and jumping on. Thanks for tuning in.